Hey guys, in Psalms 35:27 it says, "Let them shout for joy and rejoice who favor my vindication, and let them say continually, the Lord be magnified, who delights in the prosperity of his servant." God delights in your prosperity, and you might say, well, there are so many errors, there have been so many pitfalls in the prosperity gospel, and I think we'd be remiss to not acknowledge that there have been. But just because there has been excess and error does not mean that you throw the baby out with the bathwater. The word says right here that God delights in the prosperity of his servant. In fact, one of the names of God is El Shaddai, the God who provides. That's not a description just of something he does, that's a description of something he is. It's a description of his nature. He is a God who delights in giving. He is a God who gives. He delights in the prosperity of his servant. And of course, Jesus was the representation of the Father on earth. In John 1 it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word was in the beginning with God." But then later on, Jesus himself said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." Well, if God delights in the prosperity of his servant, can we see a reflection of this? Can we see a manifestation of this in the life and ministry of Jesus? Let's go to John 14. John 14 and verse 15. "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." And if you remember, there's a verse in James that says that faith without works is dead. In other words, if you really believe something, there should be some corresponding actions to illustrate that you actually believe what you say you believe. And in the same way, here he's saying, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. If you say that you love Jesus, that love should be backed up or illustrated by you actually doing what he said. But the question then becomes, well, what are his commandments? Okay, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So what exactly are the commandments of Jesus? Well, first and foremost, just one chapter down in John 15, first and foremost is the commandment of love. Because in John 15 and verse 12, he said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you." Verse 13, "Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends." So that is the great commandment. The commandment of Jesus is to love one another as he loved us, to be like him, and dying to our old nature and living in his nature. And living in his nature, we live also in that nature which is love. And loving our brethren, loving one another as he loved us. But that's not the only commandment Jesus ever gave us in the Word. There are lots of commandments that Jesus gave us in the Word. This is the big one, but what are some other ones? Let's go to John 16, one chapter down from that, and verse 23. John 16, verse 23 and 24. "In that day you will not question me about anything. Truly, truly, I say to you, if you ask the Father for anything in my name, he will give it to you. Until now you have asked for nothing in my name. Ask, and you will receive, that your joy may be full." So here, Jesus is telling us to ask. That word ask is not a suggestion. In the Greek, it's an imperative tense verb, meaning Jesus is not suggesting that you ask. He is telling you to ask. If you will, he is commanding you to ask. So this is a command for you to ask so that you will receive, so that your joy may be made full. But wait a minute. Jesus said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Well, I think sometimes we get this idea, especially if you've grown up in a religious background, well, you just have to slave away and do your best to do enough good works, and maybe if you slave away and do enough good works, maybe someday, years down the line in the future, maybe you'll be able to partake of a few crumbs of heavenly blessing, a few crumbs of the favor of God. But that's not how this is supposed to go down. That is not God's will for you. That's not the nature of God. Well, I'm not good enough for that. Well, that doesn't matter. Jesus was good enough for the both of us. You sure weren't good enough for that, and neither was I. But thank God I'm not just in me anymore, I'm in him. Not because of what I did, but because I believe in what he did. Jesus was good enough for both of us. But back to John 14:15, he said, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. But then we see that one of his commandments is ask and you will receive. Meaning, I can't really love Jesus by keeping his commandments. I can't even fully love him without letting him bless me. That's how good Jesus is. He loves you so much that he doesn't want you to have to slave away for years and years and years trying to do enough good deeds to be blessed. He loves you so much that you can't even fully love him by keeping his commandments without letting him bless you. He is so good.